Big events ahead for TNA. Okay, so we got to get to this TNA Impact reaction. I did get a chance to watch the episode. Naturally, we're here. But I got to tell you guys a funny story about my time watching this show. So I put the show on, probably like 8:30 p.m. Hawaii time, which is, if you're East Coast, it's like 5 hours behind or behind you guys, right? So I put it on and I within 3 minutes was fast asleep. So I fell asleep during Jake Something's entrance. Okay. I fell asleep all the way through the first match. I woke up with my brother, that whole thing. And I ended up having to rewind it. I was like, how the hell did we get here? And why am I asleep? So I ended up rewinding it. And I was able to watch the match. And then immediately after that match, I fell back asleep. I woke up at some point during the middle of the show, watched a bunch of stuff, and I got to the main event and I fell asleep again. So last night, I made sure to watch the opening match again and I watched the main event for the first time because I just had I had a lot of difficulty watching the show. I don't know if it's or if the show was just mediocre. I think both things are probably true because it seemed like the crowd was dead for this. Like it was day 2 of a marathon taping and a lot of the audience had left during certain portions of the show. They did tape out of order, but it seemed like a lot of the show was taped during times when there just weren't anybody there. The lights were way much lower. There seemed like there's way more open seats in the background. Now, while the live taping did great, and probably the beginning part of night 2 did great, there were parts of the post live taping. So when they were in San Antonio, they taped some stuff before the live episode. Then they go right into the live episode, and then they ask people to hang around afterwards so they can tape some stuff afterwards. Seems like that portion, and then the second half of night 2 tapings was really tough because I think a lot of people are just like, oh, to hell with this, I'm leaving. It's like we got to see who we wanted to see. We're out of here. And that's the trouble with TNA with some of their storytelling. They don't really have there's not a single story going on in TNA right now that's worth watching. That's worth sinking your teeth into on a week-to-week basis. Is the slow burn turn of Nick Nemeth really that interesting? I don't think so. And what are the I think the Tesla stuff is pretty good. But then there's a segment of the audience that just doesn't want her on TV, right? Small segment, but there's still people that just don't want her on TV. The Leon Slater story. I mean, I like the story, but that's not big time, right? Like he's, got all these veteran wrestlers trying to manipulate him, and then what's going to happen with him? Is he going to turn? Is he going to join the system? Like that's a decent story, but that's not a big time story. They need to get their bloodline. They need to get their Hangman and Swerve. They need their Drew and CM Punk. They don't have anything like that. They got a happy-go-lucky champion that just wants to wrestle everybody. It's and it's never mad. They got their women's champion who's again taking on all comers. They got the Hardy Boys who have no opponents. They literally have no opponents. I think they're gonna have to wrestle for Axiom soon. They're bringing in over people from NXT, but you bring in Cora Jade, and she is the cult of no personality. She's got the personality of a wet blanket. When she's talking, it's so boring. And then her in the ring is just not good. And then they have their women's division is about as we get. So unless they significantly upgrade the roster soon, which I assume that they would be upgrading the roster by this Full Sail show, if they don't have significant upgrades, man, they're in fucking trouble. Because this episode was a chore. It really was. They've had some of the I really like that first live show. I thought the week after that was not very good, and then I thought last week's was pretty damn good, and then this week was like the most loaded as far as like they had title matches, they had all, but and then I had Josh Alexander's last match, but this thing fucking dragged. I was like, wow, what's going on here? I was like, am I exhausted or is this really bad? I don't know. I'll let you guys decide. But I struggled watching this show. I really did. Okay. So let's get into it. I don't have much time. I've already gone over my hour. Joe Hendry defeated Jake something. Again, I had to rewatch this a couple of times because I kept falling asleep. But Jake something not over, and I don't think he's coming back. I think this was his last match in the company. I don't know for that for a fact. I know he's gone for a while. But so I think they just kind of like, hey, let's give him a world title match on his way out. But he's not a guy that was like over, and they weren't pushing the guy, and all of a sudden he gets a title shot. It like makes no sense. But Hendry fought back. So, and this was not as good as their Philadelphia match last year. I thought their match in Philadelphia really set the tone for Joe Hendry's push, and so I think they tried to recapture that and make Joe Hendry look really good in a winning effort. I'm not saying that the match was bad, but they, the crowd was not into it as they were last year. But Hendry fights back, hits the fallaway slam for a 2 count. He pops back up. He does the "We Will Rock You" stomp bullshit that brings the crowd to life. Hendry looks for a standing ovation finisher, but something blocks it and takes back over again. After hitting a couple of big man moves on the champion, something tried to hitting the top rope, only for Hendry to cut him off. He climbed up and hit him with a super fallaway slam. Does the hip up, "We Will Rock You," and then hits the standing ovation for the victory. And then afterwards, he's interrupted by Ryan Nemeth, who's saying, "My brother is not going to be happy about this." Ryan Nemeth pops out and babbles more about how his brother will not approve of this as Hendry and joins Hendry in the ring. Santino Marella hits the ring in the distraction. Jake something blasts Hendry. Nick Nemeth runs out, and as Santino tries talking, Nemeth goes to hit something with a super kick. He'd already hit him with a couple at that point. He goes to hit something with another super kick, and then he takes out Santino. So this is the storyline that they're telling because Nick Nemeth is in Qatar during the next set of tapings. So he's actually not going to be in town. He's fully committed to the company, but he's actually going to miss this taping. And I think he's going to be in Australia for the next set of tapings after that. So, but he's committed, guys. No worries there. TNA is just a booking for Nemeth, by the way. Just want everybody to know that. Just another booking for him. But so anyway, he kicks Santino, and then afterwards, Santino suspends him for a month. Then they make the big announcement of TNA Unbreakable coming back. And then we get Ash by Elegance defeating the King Bees, Charity King and Danny B. Apparently the King Bees were the NWA champions for a little bit. But they were kind of standing in the ring as the jobbers. They look like jobbers. But I got to say, I thought they were really good. If they update their look, as far as like I don't think the King Bees is a cool name. I just don't. But it could grow on me, but I just didn't think that their outfits were like TV worthy, I would say. They just look very indie. But they were really good in the ring, I thought. I thought the bigger one, I don't know which one she is, but she's the heavier set one. I thought she was had explosive. I thought she was tremendous. I was like, okay, wait a minute. These guys are really good. Keep them around. They're pretty good. I was like, we need tag teams, and they're a tag team, and they're actually pretty damn good, and they're former NWA tag team champions. What are we doing here? And I don't think they're going to cost a lot of money. Keep them around. Maybe let them get some wins on Explosion, build them back up. Maybe, upgrade the gimmick a little bit, upgrade the wardrobe. I think we could have something with these two. I thought they were good. I had never heard of them before because I'm not watching NWA. Billy says King Bees are both better in the ring than Cora Jade. Yeah, for sure. Cora Jade just looks like a star, right? And that's pro wrestling. I just didn't feel like they had like the star look. I'm not talking about their physical appearance. I'm not saying that, but I just felt like, the wardrobe, the gimmick, it's like, let's upgrade that a little bit. They got something. It was a glorified squash match, but once they were on offense, they looked pretty good. But Heather escapes and Ash yanks Charity out to the floor, slamming her to the steel step. Heather hits a high spot to the other half of the King Beast. I think that was her finish. I just can't, like, this guy doesn't know the finish name, and honestly, I don't know the name either. So after the match, they give the King Bees a makeover where they're like writing loser on their face with lipstick, and then Jody Thread and Danny Luna. So this fucking feud is still going. They just won in this feud. The babyface has already won, but the feud's still going. Okay. And then footage is shown of Leon Slater and the Hardys in action on last week's show. Backstage, Leon Slater is on the phone gushing about it when the Hardys approach him. They show mutual respect and admiration and talk about their passion for the business at young ages. Slater says he hopes to work with them again. The Hardys tell Slater it's good to see him and guys like Joe Hendry with the same passion they had at their age. Slater for a Swanton 450. Slater says if the Hardys believe in him, he won't let them down. They hug it up, and the segment wraps up. So there you go. And then Mustafa Ali has a town hall. So he's with the Great Hands, John Schuyler and Jason Hodge, as well as Tasha Steeles. Tasha Steeles is his communications director. I believe, was that her title? What was Tasha Steeles' title? I can't remember that. I'll wait for the chat to remind me. But the Great Hands are the cabinet, and I believe Tasha Steeles was his communications director. He says that a great leader, and he is the great leader and the rightful number one contender for the TNA World Title. He's won one match since July in TNA, and it was against Laredo Kid. So Tommy Dreamer rightfully walks up, and Ali thinks Dreamer considers himself the real leader, but Dreamer says nope, not him, and it points to Mike Santana. So I think that's the Rebellion match, which I'm down with that. But who gets the world title match? I don't know. We'll see. All right. And then we go back to the ring, and Sami Callihan's theme hits next, but instead of him simply walking out, he comes flying out all beat to hell. And behind him was Mance Warner and Steph DeLander, who was still toting the TNA Digital Media Championship. They leave Callahan laying, but he stumbles his way to the ring anyways and insists the referee ring the bell. The referee doesn't want to, but Callahan surprises Kazarian with a stunner, and he looks for his finisher, but Warner comes back out. The distraction allows Kazarian to secure a chicken wing for the win. After the match, Callahan stumbles and mumbles over into a microphone while still barely conscious that he wants Warner to come out to the ring so they can finish fighting. Warner obliges, but security rushes and breaks things up. Callahan breaks free and rushes Warner again. Security separate them again. So, I think we could get okay. Yep, Tasha Steeles is press secretary. There you go. Press secretary. So that makes sense. Then Jim Miller is with Josh Alexander. She mentions how he agreed to one final match in TNA Wrestling tonight. Alexander says it's a shame that his last match is fight. Like Eric Young, he drove up and down the road with for 7 years. He tells Young that he doesn't have to like him, but he's damn sure going to make sure that he respects him, and talks about his love for TNA. And then we go backstage again. A lot of backstage. JDC confronts Leon Slater. So JDC was on NXT this week and wrestled Lexus King in a losing effort. I would not have shown that if I were TNA. I would have probably left that one off the show. So JDC confronts Slater, who is on the phone again. He tells him the Hardys told him everything that Hardys told him earlier was all wrong. He tells Slater he didn't do that well last week. Slater points out that they won. He says Slater is making a career off of potential without any substance. Anyway, they get into an argument. Challenge for next week. It's going to be a street fight. Slater and JDC in Orlando at Full Sail University. So there you go. All right. And back in the ring, we got Zaya Brookside taking on Cora Jade. And the show is dragging on here. Cora Jade got the victory. Masha Slamovich has no opponents. So it's like they're going to drag out this whole thing with Cora Jade, and they're really going to drag out the Tessa match because that's where everybody wants to get to is Tessa. So I think we get. I thought that we were getting Cora Jade and Masha at NXT's show this week. They have their Vengeance Day show, but there is no TNA presence on that show whatsoever, as far as I can tell. Which begs the question, why don't we have a February show on TNA Plus? As of right now, there's no reason. Because they could have done something on Friday, but they opted not to. There was no real reason not to do a February show. So other than that, maybe they're just being cheap. I don't know. But for those of us that pay for TNA Plus, we expect that on non-pay-per-view months, we get an exclusive show. But they skipped February this year. I don't know why. And I don't like it. That's not good business. They should have given us something. No, it makes no sense. When the show returns, we see Ariana Grace approaching Tessa Blanchard, who talks down to her. Santino Marella walks up, still upset from being kicked. He tells Tessa to chill before he loses his cool. He tells her she'll have a match next week or there will be consequences. She starts talking down to him until he pounds the wall, yells again, and that she'll either have a match next week or there will be consequences. So it looks like she's having a match in Orlando. We'll see how that goes. Another interview. Rascals make their way down to the ring, and they waste no time talking about their issues with the wannabe Rascals of Wesley, Tyson, and Tyreek. And they say the B word, which then brings out Wesley's crew. Anyway, they get into a big fight. Ace Austin then joins the Rascals, and the NXT trio ends up getting the better of them. And they hold Austin, and Lee blasts him with a cardiac kick. Hannafin runs down the remaining lineup for the show. So there you go. So I think that's probably a big trios match for Sacrifice coming up in March. AJ Francis teases a first-class upgrade. So hopefully that means Rich Swan's coming back. I don't know what it meant, but of course. And then we go to Masha Slamovich. She defeats Savannah Evans. Savannah Evans, who was getting a push, and then she just gets her ass kicked by Lei Ying Lee in just a few minutes. And we have not seen Lei Ying Lee since. So naturally, we have to start pushing Savannah Evans again. She wins the worst battle royal of all time to become the number one contender. And now is lost to Masha, so she's dead. But this match wasn't anything special. Let's go to the ending. Evans builds on her lead as Tessa Blanchard is shown watching backstage. After some more back and forth action, Slamovich hits her finisher, the snowplow, and picks up the victory. So there you go. And then main event, we got Eric Young defeating Josh Alexander. Nowhere near as good as their Slammiversary match from 2022. Nowhere near. The crowd was dead for the most part. They did get him up. At some point in certain spots, but I think Billy said that it was it was the very last match on the second day of tapings, and they just couldn't keep the crowd. They tried their best. They did do some cool stuff. I mean, I know, Josh Alexander hit the Styles Clash, but it was just nowhere near as good as their Slammiversary match from a couple years ago. And it sucks that that's how Josh is going out, because I thought it was like a 3-star match, right? Like not like a bad match, but not a great match either. You'd want to see Josh Alexander go out on a great match. Honestly, in hindsight, it would have been nice if his last match was that Santana match, because that was incredible. But all right, I'm being corrected. Billy says there's a reason they added an April show. They could have had that show too. So there's nothing wrong with giving us extra, but instead they just evened it out, I guess. So now, because we're getting the Unbreakable show in April, they're taking away from February. I'm just like, well, we should still have had a February show, but it's whatever. That April show should be fun. So, but yeah, there's only 8 TNA Plus shows a year, so they were not going to give us a 9th one. God forbid we get a 9th one. But yeah, the Northern Armory kept running in, and eventually Young got the victory with this pile driver, and then they just closed the show with Young walking up the ramp, and they zoomed in on Josh's face, and that's how he's left the company. And so goodbye to Josh Alexander. Looks like he's heading to AEW. I hope the brother is getting paid. Hope he gets paid a lot of money. So a overall mediocre episode to end their San Antonio run. I hope that Full Sail is much better. It's going to be tough. No Mustafa Ali, no Jake something, no Nick Nemeth. So I hope they have something up their sleeve for the show there in Orlando. Oh, Billy says they gave him a nice ring celebration afterwards. Yeah, so afterwards, like they didn't show it on TV, but all the stars came out and he got to say goodbye to the audience. So that was cool. I hope they kind of release that on social media at some point. I hope they do. They might not though. But yeah, I hope they got something planned for the Full Sail shows because the roster's thin, really thin. I hope they got some new signings. As of right now, there's nothing rumored. Probably Indy Hartwell. I can see Indy being there. I think she's available. Yeah, I think Indy Hartwell could be there. I'm really curious about Duke Hudson. I don't know what his status is. I don't know when his 30 days are up, but Duke Hudson could be a guy for TNA if they're able to get him. I really do think that. So, but all right, guys, that is going to do it for me this week on Brace for Impact. Sorry about the. I just didn't think this episode was that good, and I fell asleep multiple times, so it was a tough one to get through. But hey, look, we did an hour and 16 minutes, so good stuff. Thanks to Billy and Io in the chat, and thanks to everybody for joining us from all the different platforms. Remember, if you're watching this on YouTube or Twitter, you could have been watching this on Saturday morning, all the way through, or you could have had the audio right in your inbox first thing on Saturday. You could have already had it, but instead you're watching this 5 days later in smaller form through various clips, and you're missing out on the fun. So head to patreon.com/the Mike and JD show to join in on the fun. All right, guys, that's going to do it for me this time. And until next time, mahalo. Hold your breath, but it won't last. Who knows if